Morning, and it's time for another music video. I'm continuing my ranking of songs. This focuses more on my early musical career in the 60s and the early 70s, and of course predominantly, it focuses on singles, and these songs were all singles. I'm at 1969 and I've got 20 for you. This first video will cover those that I ranked from 20 to 11, plus a few notable mentions. Go through a few notable mentions here quickly then. I Can't Get Next to You, The Temptations. Love this band. It's the vocal sort of chicanery and the diversity of this Motown sound that was captivating. The Ballad of John and Yoko by the Beatles. Of course, this album's title reflected where the band were heading, and they were heading to the exit door. But it's still a great track. Where Do You Go To My Lovely, a sort of Parisian love song by Peter Starstead that hit the top of the charts, I seem to remember, and I really liked it. It was there was an accordion on it. It had that sort of Parisian romantic feeling running throughout it, and nicely sang as well. Bad Moon Rising, an early hit for Creedence Clearwater Revival. It seemed to be on the radio all the time. Half as Nice by Amon Corner. Particularly like this song. It was a cover, and it's got in there Sweet Dream, another one. This was an early single by Jethro Tull, and it's symbolic for me because it was one of the first 7-inch records that I ever bought. It didn't do a great deal in the UK singles charts, however. And then the infamous Je t'aime n'a plus, Jane Birkin and Serge Gainsborough, that managed to get banned because of the heavy breathing. It's still a beautiful piece of music. And finally, on these honourable mentions, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother by the Hollies. This sort of signalled a slight shift in their material. Slow ballad, very contemporary, but I do like it. So those are the notable honourable mentions. Better get on to the video now. With number 20, Israelites, song written by Desmond Dekker and Leslie Kong, and it became a hit for Dekker's group Desmond Dekker and the Aces. It reached the top of the charts in many countries in 1969. Few could understand all the lyrics, but the single was the first UK reggae #1. It combined the Rastafarian religion with rude boy comments. You get up in the morning and you're slaving for bread. A man's response to his girl's need for more money. And it starts reflecting that poor money is for his labour. The title has been the source of speculation, but most settle for the Rastafarian movement's association with the 12 tribes of Israel. In the 1960s, Jamaican Rastafarians were largely marginalised as cultists and ostracised from the larger society, including by the more conservative Christian church in Kingston, Jamaica. Destitute, meaning slaving for bread, and unkept, meaning shirt torn up, trousers gone. These were some of the statements that were attached to the Rastafarians, and they became quite tempted by a life of crime. But they didn't want to end up like Bonnie and Clyde, and the song really is a lament of this condition generated by the racism. I think it's a great song. And then Blackberry Way by The Move, very much typical of Baroque pop. It was written by Roy Wood, the guitarist and vocalist, and produced by Jimmy Miller. Blackberry Way, though, was a bleak counterpoint to the sunny psychedelia of earlier Move recordings. It nevertheless became the band's most successful single, reached #1 on the UK charts in February '69. The Move vocalist, however, Carl Wayne, refused to sing on the song, so Wood handled the lead vocals, and Richard Tandy, who later played with Wood's next band, ELO, played harpsichord on Blackberry Way. Despite the success of the single, the style of psychedelia-tinged pop sat uneasily with guitarist Trevor Burton, and he left the group shortly after. Wood said in a 1994 interview that Blackberry Way was his favourite Move song of all time, commenting that it could have been performed in any era and it would have still worked. The Move, of course, were Roy Wood leading backing vocals, guitar and sitar. Trevor Burton played bass and backing vocals on the track, Bev Bevan on drums, and as I referred earlier, Richard Tandy played some harpsichord. And there was some uncredited mellotron in there as well. 18 now, Lay Lady Lay, written by Bob Dylan, originally released in 1969 on his National Skyline album. Dylan sings the song in a rather low croon rather than in the high nasal singing style that he was associated with earlier on his folk recordings and eventually on his latterly electric recordings. It's infectious and an appealing country folk flavoured number. On the record, Bob, of course, on guitar and harmonica and keyboards vocals. Pete Drake played some pedal steel guitar. Charlie Daniels was on guitar and Charlie McCoy bass. Kenny Buttrey played drums and Bob Wilson on the organ piano. It's one of my favourite Dylan tracks, possibly because it sounds very different. Now, Pinball Wizard, written by Pete Townshend, performed by The Who, of course. It features on the '69 rock opera album Tommy. The original recording was released as a single and reached #4 in the UK charts. The lyrics were written from the perspective of a pinball champion called Local Lad in the Tommy Ibretta book, and they were astounded by the vocals of the opera eponymous main character, Tommy Walker. He ain't got no distractions, can't hear those buzzers and bells, don't see lights a flashing, plays by sense of smell, always gets a replay, never seen him fall, that deaf, dumb and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball. Yeah, my singing ain't quite the same as Young Daltrey, but you get the idea. Townshend called it the most clumsy piece of writing he'd ever done. Nevertheless, the song was a huge commercial success and remains one of the most recognised tunes from the opera. It was a perpetual concert favourite for Who fans due to its pop sound and familiarity. 16, Behind a Painted Smile, song written by Ivy Jo Hunter and Beatrice Verdi. Recorded in '67 by the Isley Brothers and appeared on their Soul on the Rocks album, but was released as a single and reached #5 in the UK charts in May '69. Of course, it was on Tamla Motown. I absolutely adored this. It came over the radio waves on a daily basis, and I usually sang along. They originated from Cincinnati, Ohio, of course, and started as a vocal trio consisting of brothers O'Kelly, Rudolph and Ronald Isley. It started out in the 50s, by the way. Then latterly, younger brothers Ernie on lead guitar and drums and Marvin bass guitar, and Rudolph's brother-in-law Chris Jasper on keyboards and synthesizers joined them, and that was the band that released the absolutely fantastic 3+3. Okay, that's my look at Behind a Painted Smile, one of the Isley Brothers' greatest singles. So to 15 then, Oh Well. This was composed by Peter Green, the vocalist and lead guitar player with Fleetwood Mac, and it also appeared on revised versions of that year's Then Play On album, although it's not on my copy, and of course the band's greatest hits that was released in '71. Oh Well was composed in two parts. Part one was a fast electric blues song with vocals, and it lasted just over 2 minutes. Part two, an entirely different instrumental piece with classical influences and lasted over 5.5 minutes. The original 69 single featured the first minute of part 2 as a fade out coda on the A side, and then part 2 begins again on the B side. During concerts, however, Fleetwood Mac only played the first part. Green wrote the part 2 on a Ramirez Spanish guitar, and he dismissed part 1 as a throwaway riff, and it was intended to appear on the flip side of part 2, but the record company changed the mind of the great man. The first part of the song features a fast blues guitar riff played by Green and joined by Kerwin and bassist McVie before a musical silence which is punctuated only by Mick Fleetwood's cowboy percussion. Green sings a brief verse with no musical accompaniment before the riff begins again and Kerwin plays a solo. There's another silence that precedes a second verse and a replay of the riff. When the second part follows, there's a brief pause before Green's somber Spanish-style acoustic guitar and low electric guitar, leading into further instrumental passages of recorder, cello and piano, the latter played by Spencer. That was his only contribution to the song, and he wasn't on part 1. In fact, Green played all the other instruments heard during part 2. Now you know the ins and outs of Oh Well. Brilliant song though. And then I've got a medley. It's called, the titles is Aquarius Let the Sunshine In, The Flesh Failures, commonly called Aquarius Let the Sunshine In. 2 songs written for the 1967 musical Hair by James Radeau and Jerome Ragni, who wrote the lyrics, and Galt McDermott, who was responsible for the music. Released as a single by the American R&B group The Fifth Dimension. Spent 6 weeks at number 1 in the Billboard charts, and the instrumental backing, of course, provided by the session band The Wrecking Crew. And I could go through that band, but I won't. It also featured some strings, wind and brass, and generally was a very, very nice piece of music that you could sing along to. To 13. This is a double A-sided single, Come Together and Something, by the Beatles. Come Together, the opening track on the album Abbey Road, also released in '69, and it was coupled with Something. The song Come Together reached the top of the US chart and got to 4 in the UK charts. Lennon and his wife Yoko held non-violent protests against the Vietnam War in that year, dubbed the Beddings for Peace. And in May, counterculture figures from across North America visited Lennon, including American Timothy Leary, an early advocate of LSD, whom Lennon admired. Anyway, Leary asked Lennon to write him a campaign song based on the campaign slogan, Come Together, Join the Party. Lennon used the phrase for the campaign song to compose a new song for the Abbey Road album. It was based on the '56 single You Can't Catch Me by Chuck Berry, but when Lennon presented the competition to his bandmates, McCartney noticed its similarity to Berry's and recommended they slow it in tempo to reduce the resemblance. And the group took 8 takes to get it actually down. Line-up, well, we know the line-up, don't we? But one significant event, Ringo Starr placed tea towels over the tom-tom drums to further dampen the sound. And he didn't need to use his hands to play guitar, did Lennon. And so he's added on hand claps each time he sang Shoot Me. Also, he added some tambourine over the solo and the coda. As I say, the song was issued as a double A side with Something, written by George Harrison. It made making it the first Harrison composition to become a Beatles A side. It was considered a love song to Pattie Boyd's Harrison first wife. The song was issued as a double A side single with Harrison's Something. This made it the first Harrison composition to become a Beatles A-side. Of course, the song is considered a love song to Pattie Boyd, Harrison's first wife, and the track features a guitar solo that several critics identify among Harrison's finest playing. The song also drew praise from the other Beatles and their producer George Martin, Lennon stating that it was the best song on Abbey Road. So there we have it. Also on this, of course, was Billy Preston. 12 now. This is Living in the Past by Jethro Tull. Composer Anderson said he wrote the tune in approximately 1 hour in his room at a Hollywood Inn on the banks of the Charles River outside Boston, Massachusetts in February '69. He then recorded it with a small local ensemble of session musicians. God knows where he found those, and they were the cheapest he could find, he quotes. They were later overdubbed by band members, and it was Tull's fourth single, and to UK audiences that is. Anderson described the song as a critical reflection of the hippie lifestyle and a general naivety of the era. Lines like "We'll go walking out while others shout of war's disasters" reflected his rather cynical view of much of the world in the late 60s. I absolutely adore it, particularly the flute parts. On this video is my 11th choice. It's Get Back, written by Paul McCartney. Originally released as a single in April '69, but it was credited to the Beatles with Billy Preston. The album version of this song also became the closing track on the Let It Be album released in 1970. That was just after the group split up, of course. It reached 14 countries #1 slot, and it was the only single that was credited to another artist at the request of Preston. Also the first single to debut on the singles charts at #1. And of course it's famous for the January '69 concert on the roof of Apple Studios. Lennon described Get Back as a better version of Lady Madonna. A Potboilers rewrite. Lennon also said that there was some underlying thing about Yoko in there, saying that McCartney looked at her in the studio every time he sang Get Back to Where You Once Belonged. Very friendly. So anyway, that's my pitch on my top songs from 1969, going from 20 to 11. And of course I will be back with another video to go through that magnificent top 10. Thanks for listening. Comments. I adore comments, good and bad. And I'd also like you to perhaps point out how I may affect other potential viewers, because I ain't getting enough views and I get the feeling that people don't like me. Don't know why. I'm an old man living in Thailand with back pain, but that's how it goes. Maybe my videos are a bit too thorough. Maybe they actually describe too much detail. But I ain't going to go shopping. That is impossible here in Thailand. And to be honest, I find shopping videos okay to listen to, but I can't put them together because they're shopping.